Hi all, today we are going to discuss about electrodynamic or dynamometer type moving coil instrument. This can be used for measurement of current, voltage and power for both DC and AC up to about 125 Hz with high precision and even up to audio frequencies with medium precision, and with some minor modifications even this instrument can be used for measurement of power factor and frequency. So this we are going to see in the respective topics in detail. So these are transfer type of instruments because they have the same accuracy for DC as well as AC. That is, they may be calibrated with a DC source and then can be used without any modification to measure the AC. That means just do the calibration with the DC source, but it can be used for the AC also without any modifications. It will have the same accuracy in both the cases. So as the accuracy of these instruments are very high, so they can be used in a laboratory for calibration of the other instruments. First, let us see the construction and operation. So after that, we will go for the torque equation followed by applications as well as limitations of these instruments. So first, starting with the construction, so let us try to compare this with moving coil type of instrument. We have seen in the moving coil type of instrument there will be two parts. One is the permanent magnet. So that permanent magnet produces the operating field, and inside that permanent magnet one moving coil will be there. Current passes through the moving coil that produces some flux. So the flux produced by the moving coil interacts with the permanent magnet flux or the flux produced by the permanent magnet and produces the required torque. So in that case, as one is permanent magnet and one is the moving coil, it can be used only for DC. Whereas in this case, the permanent magnet is replaced by another coil. That coil is called as the fixed coil. Here the flux is produced or the operating field is produced by the fixed coil, and the second force or the second flux is produced by the moving coil. Now interaction of these two fields produces the required deflecting torque. So that's why this basically consists of two coils. First one is the fixed coil. So this fixed coil is used to produce the operating field, and generally this fixed coil is divided into two parts. You can see this is one part, this is second part. This is split into two parts to have uniform distribution of flux around the moving coil. So the second part will be the moving coil. This moving coil produces the flux that interacts with this flux, fixed coil flux, to produce the deflecting torque. So because of the deflecting torque, so this will start rotating. This moving coil will start moving inside the magnetic field, or it will start deflecting. A pointer will be attached to this moving coil. So pointer will deflect and show on the scale. So in order to carry the current to this moving coil to and out of this coil, we go for the helical springs. The purpose of the springs is twofold. The first thing is to carry the current to this moving coil, and the second one is they produce the required controlling torque also. So it serves the two purpose. So in this instrument, the difference is because we have to use for DC as well as AC with same accuracy, and we know in the case of AC there is a problem of hysteresis and eddy current loss. So in order to avoid that difficulties or the errors due to this hysteresis and eddy current losses, so generally these coils are air cored. Sorry, only air core is used here. We are not using any metal. Only this is wound on the air. Only air cored coils are used here. So helical springs we have already discussed. And coming to the damping, here we go for the air friction damping is used. We are not going to use the eddy current damping. The reason is, in order to produce the eddy current damping, we need one permanent magnet. So if you are placing a permanent magnet, the disadvantage of this type of instrument is similar to the moving iron instrument. Here the operating field is very weak because the field is produced due to two coils which are carrying the current, and because as we should not apply the loading effect on the instrument, because instrument should not load your circuit, so that's why the amount of power that can be consumed by the instrument is minimum. So that's why generally the flux that is produced will be very less in this case. It is of 0.0052 to 0.006 Webers per meter square. So if you are installing some permanent magnet, that flux will interact with this field that may distort this field. That's why we always go for air friction damping here. Proper shielding is provided against the stray magnetic fields using laminated steel shield, because in this case what happens, the field that is produced is very weak. So due to some external magnetic field, the interference may come that may disturb your reading. In order to avoid that problem, what we will do, we have to provide some shielding such that the external field cannot enter into your instrument. So that's why your instrument is enclosed inside a laminated sheet steel. So steel shield is provided so that the external magnetic field will not disturb it. Let us see how the torque is produced in this instrument and what is the equation. So if you are taking the fixed coil or the fixed coil which are non-moving type or which are on the stator, so this will have like this. This is the coil. So whenever the current passes through the coil, we know that we can find the direction of the magnetic field produced using the right hand thumb rule. In this case, if your thumb indicates the direction of the current, if thumb indicates the direction of the current, then your curled finger indicates the direction of the magnetic field. Whereas if you are taking the case of a solenoid, because this resembles the solenoid, in the case of a solenoid, if the curled finger indicates the direction of a current, then your thumb indicates the direction of the magnetic field. Then your thumb indicates the direction of the magnetic field. You can apply any one of these principles. When you apply here it is cross. Here also it is cross, on the bottom side it is dot. So if you apply your right hand thumb rule, that means the cross means it is going away. You will observe that the direction of the field will be like this. It will be in the clockwise direction. So both the fields will add to each other because of all these conductors. So that's why your resultant magnetic field will be like this. Similarly, in the case of lower side, it is a dot. That means that thumb is indicating towards us, then your curled finger indicates the counterclockwise direction. So that's why this is given as the counterclockwise direction. Similarly, let us assume the current passing in the moving coil is like this. This side is cross, this side is dot. So in that case, the flux produced will be, apply again this thumb rule. So here it is cross, so it will be clockwise direction. Here it is dot, it is counterclockwise direction. So now there are two fluxes. The flux will interact with each other. You can see here at any instant, because of this one, you can see this flux is produced is clockwise direction here up to this point, but here this is counterclockwise direction. It is going like this. That means up at this point, the direction of the flux produced by two are opposing each other. Whereas if you are taking the second side, in the second side you can see the direction is like this. So flux produced by this lower half side, this is by the fixed magnet also in the same direction. That means we can tell in the lower side the flux is adding, on the top side flux is opposing. Similarly, for this dot, flux produced by this dot, you can observe that in the top side the direction of the flux is same as the flux produced by the fixed coil. So both will add to each other. Whereas in the bottom side they will oppose to each other, because you can see this is passing in this direction, whereas this flux is passing in the clockwise direction, this counterclockwise direction. Both are opposite, so that will oppose each other. So resultant will be cancelled out, or we can tell that the resultant field will come like this. This will be the shape of my resultant field. We know that always the field want to align in a straight line. That means it want to pass through the minimum possible path. So that's why what it will do, it will try to align this moving coil in such a way that the flux can pass in the shortest possible path. So because of this, what happens? This will push this one upwards. This will be pushed downwards. So the torque is produced in this direction. So this is logically. So if you want to calculate this theoretically, so theoretically we can calculate like this. Let small I1 represent the instantaneous value of the current in the fixed coils, that is given in amperes, and small I2 instantaneous of value of the current in the moving coil, that is also in amperes. L1 is the self-inductance of the fixed coil in Henry, and L2 is the self-inductance of the moving coil in Henry. M is the mutual inductance between the fixed and the moving coils. So we know the flux linkages of the coil 1 will be equal to, the flux linkages will be L1. This is self-inductance of coil 1 multiplied by the current passing through the coil 1. And second one, due to the current that is passing through the coil 2 also, it produces the flux. That flux also interacting with the second coil. We know that. So that means we have to take as M times of I2. So this is mutual inductance between the two coils, M times of I2, due to the current passing in the second coil. Similarly, flux linkages of the second coil will be due to its own inductance, that means L2 into I2 plus mutual inductance times of current passing in the first coil. Or we can calculate the total electrical energy input. Total energy input will be equal to integration of the power, that means integration of E multiplied by I. You agree with me? So this will be E1 multiplied by I1 dt plus E2 multiplied by I2 into dt. So if you have to do the integration of this one, then it will give for the required time. We know that the EMF is nothing but d psi by dt. We have seen in the EMFT. So this I can write as d psi is equal to E dt. That means we can write E1 dt is nothing but d psi 1. Similarly, E2 dt I can write as a d psi 2. So this will become I1 d psi 1 plus I2 d psi 2. Because psi 1 we already know this. Similarly, psi 2 I have just substituted here. So this will be differentiation of this one. Similarly, differentiation of this one. So differentiation of this one will be, here two variables are there, L1, I1. So it can be equal to, if you are taking L as constant, it will become L1 times of di1. If you are taking I as constant, it will be I1 multiplied by dl1. So I1 multiplied by I1, it is becoming I1 square here. Similar is the case mutual inductance, M multiplied by di2. M multiplied by di2 into I1. Similarly, I1 multiplied by I2 multiplied by dm. M is taken as the variable. Similar is the case for the second part I have reproduced here. So now the energy stored in the magnetic field we know is given by half L into I square. So half into L into I1 square due to the first current. Similarly, in the second coil, energy stored will be equal to half L2 into I2 square, plus due to the mutual inductance also the energy is stored. So if you are adding due to the mutual inductance of both the coils, 1 by 2 plus 1 by 2, it becomes 1 times of I1 into I2 into M. That means with the first coil it will be half times of I1 into I2 into M. Similar is the case of first one. So total will be I1 into I2 into M. So this you have already seen in the case of EMFT course. So I am proceeding further. So the change in the energy stored. How much is the change in the energy stored? Whenever some change is there in the deflection, the change in the energy stored can be given by differentiation of this entire variable. So again here two variables are there. The variable can be either current or inductance. Similarly, current or inductance. Here also current or inductance. Here three variables are there. Here two variables are there. So when you are doing the differentiation, you will get this equation. So that will be equal to I1 into L1. I am assuming L1 is a variable. So it will become 2 times of I1 and differentiation of I1. Similarly, if you are taking I as constant, so it will be dl1. Similarly, for the case of second one also, I2 L2 di2 plus half times of it square into dl2. Similarly, coming to the third variable, I am assuming I1 and m are constant, it will be dm2. So similarly, I am assuming that I2 m are constant, I1 is variable di1. Similarly, I am assuming m is a variable, so it will be I1 multiplied by, this is I1. So I1 multiplied by I2 multiplied by dm. So let me try to erase this one. So this is I1 multiplied by I2 multiplied by dm. So from the principle of conservation of energy, we know that the total electrical energy input will be equal to change in the energy stored plus mechanical energy. That means whenever you are giving some input, some energy is stored, remaining energy will do some useful work. That means it will produce the required torque. Or we can tell that the mechanical energy is nothing but total electrical energy input minus change in the energy stored. You agree with me? So what I am doing the difference of those above two equations. That is equation number 1 minus equation number 2. That gives my total mechanical energy that is produced. So that will be equal to half times of I1 square dl1 plus half times of I2 into dl2 and plus I1 into I2 into dm. I1 into I2 into dm. So this is what we get. So here the value of L1 and L2 are constant. The L1 and L2 are constant. This is square, right? So I2 square into dl2. Here L1 L2 are constant. So obviously the differentiation of L1 and differentiation of L2, dl1 dl2 becomes 0. When you are substituting here, so that's why the equation becomes mechanical energy will be equal to I1 multiplied by I2 multiplied by dm. Suppose that if I am taking some t suffix I is instantaneous at deflecting torque, and let us take d theta is the change in the deflection, then in that case the mechanical energy is nothing but it is doing some useful work. That work done is nothing but torque multiplied by the theta. Torque multiplied by theta, small change is d theta, right? So ta multiplied by d theta. So we can conclude comparing these two things, equation number 4 and equation number 5, we can tell both are equal. So Ti d theta will be equal to I1 into I2 into dm. Or otherwise we can tell that Ti is I1 multiplied by I2 multiplied by dm by d theta. So if you are taking, for example, if dm by d theta is equal to constant, we can tell that the torque is proportional to the product of the current passing through these two coils. We can represent in that way. So we have already seen the controlling torque is produced by the spring. For the spring we have already derived before the controlling torque, that is equal to K multiplied by theta, where K is the spring constant. in Newton meter per radian. So pointer will stop when the value of Ti is equal to Tc, that will be the equilibrium condition. So when you are equating this, you will get theta is equal to I1 into I2 by K into dm by d theta. This is the final equation. So let us see what will be the operation with DC, AC, then proceeding for the application part. So when you are taking the operation with the DC, so in the case of DC, the instantaneous value current is nothing but RMS value is nothing but average value is nothing but same. All values are same, that is I1 is the current in the fixed coil, I2 is the current in the moving coil. So substituting in that equation, we can get the deflecting torque will be instantaneous value is nothing but now same value, that is I1 multiplied by I2 multiplied by dm by d theta, and controlling torque is k theta. So we can write the deflection theta will be equal to I1 I2 by k into dm by d theta, where if you are taking this dm by d theta, that means rate of change of mutual inductance with the change in the angle. If I am taking it as nearly constant, so I can write that theta is proportional to product of the two currents. If two currents are same, then it will become square of the current. So we can tell that the scale will be non-uniform in this type of instruments. So let us see the operation with AC. So for the case of AC, this I1, I2 are the instantaneous values. So for the case of AC, we know that they will continuously vary with respect to the time. In the case of AC, we know that they are continuously vary with respect to the time. That means the deflecting torque also changes continuously. That means the pointer should goes on moving continuously for the case of AC. But due to the inertia of the moving system, they cannot respond very fast to these drastic changes. So that is the reason your moving system will only respond to the average torque that is produced. Your moving system will only respond to the average torque. So average torque means we have to take the average for one cycle. So I am assuming the time period of one cycle I am representing by capital T. So this will be 1 by T integration from 0 to T, T suffix I dt. Or this, when you substitute in this equation, it will be dm by d theta into 1 by T integration from 0 to T, I1 into I2 into dt. This is the equation where T is the time period of one complete cycle. So in order to understand this further, what I am doing, I am taking a sine wave. Let us take for example, I am taking a wave. So there is some wave. This is the waveform for the current, first current. Let us assume the second current is also there. That second current is lagging behind the first current by some angle. The second current is lagging behind the first current by some angle phi. So if you want to represent the equation for this one, I can represent like this. I1 is equal to I maximum and sin omega t, and I2 is I maximum to sin omega t minus phi. So from this, if I am substituting in the deflecting torque equation, this will become dm by d theta into 1 by 2 pi integration from 0 to 2 pi, because for entire cycle, this complete cycle, this is nothing but equal to 2 pi radians. I am taking this is omega t is the axis. So that's why time period is 1 by 2 pi integration from 0 to 2 pi. So this dt become d omega t instead of dt, because we are taking omega t as my axis. So I maximum and sin omega t into I maximum to sin omega t minus phi d omega t. So when you are doing the integration, as you already know how to calculate this one, I am directly writing the equation. This will become equal to I maximum 1 into I maximum 2 divided by 2 into cos phi into dm by d theta. So this I can separate as I maximum by root 2. This I can separate as I maximum 2 by root 2. So maximum by root 2 we know nothing but equal to RMS value. So this I can write as IRMS 1 into IRMS 2 into cos pi into dm by d theta. Here this I1, I2 are nothing but RMS value of the current. So we know the controlling torque is nothing but equal to k theta, and at equilibrium TD is equal to TC. When you equate, you will get theta is equal to I1, I2 by k into cos phi into dm by d theta. Again, if you are taking dm by d theta as also constant, then we can take the value of theta is proportional to I1 multiplied by I2 multiplied by cos phi, where phi is the angle between the current passing through these two coils. So using this also we can produce the torque. Let us see the different cases. When I1 is equal to I2 is equal to I, that means both the coils carry the same current, or both the coils carry the current proportional to the input current. So in that case, we can tell that the theta, the deflection is proportional to the current square. So square of the RMS value. That means the theta is proportional to RMS value square. Or we can tell that RMS value of current is nothing but square root of theta. That means whatever the scale you are keeping, it will be square root of theta value you have to mention for the current. Because current at a particular pointer position will be equal to square root of theta. So that's why it will be non-uniform scale. So similarly, if I am taking that one coil is carrying the current which is proportional to the current passing through the circuit, let us assume it is lagging behind the voltage by some angle phi. Similarly, the current passing in the second coil or the moving coil, let us assume it is produced due to the voltage. So it is V2 divided by some constant at an angle of 0. Let us assume the current is in phase with the voltage for the second coil. So in that case, we can tell that theta is proportional to V into I into cos phi. Agree with me? One is proportional to V, another one is proportional to current, and cos of the angle cos phi. So what is Vrms into Irms into cos phi? We know that is nothing but equal to average power. So if the current is passed through the fixed coil and voltage is applied across the moving coil, then the instrument measures the average power. So as it is measuring the average power directly, that means theta is proportional to the power, or otherwise P is proportional to theta. So it will have the uniform scale for measurement of power. Only if you want to measure the voltage or current, it is non-uniform. But if you want to measure the case of the power, it will be uniform only. Similar is the case if both the currents are proportional to the voltage. In that case, the deflection is proportional to voltage square. That means V is proportional to square root of theta. It will have non-uniform scale again. So let us start the application part one by one and limitations. So first let us see when it is used as a voltmeter. So it can be used as a voltmeter from 0 to 750 volts in order to limit the current that is passing through your instrument. So generally we connect one high value of the resistance in series with your instrument. So here these are my fixed coils. Fixed coils are connected in series, and then that fixed coil is connected in series with the moving coil, which in turn is connected in series with a resistance. So current is limited. So this current is nothing but supply voltage divided by impedance of your entire circuit, that means fixed coil plus moving coil plus the impedance of this resistance also that is connected. Or otherwise we can tell that the impedance is nothing but square root of R square plus omega L square. L is the inductance of the total circuit, R is the resistance of this entire circuit. So let us take for example R. So this I am, to avoid the confusion, I am just taking it as RSC. So as the frequency is increasing, if the frequency is increased, because this can be used for DC as well as AC, when the frequency is increased, we know that this omega L will increase. When the omega L is increased, so automatically impedance is increased. When the impedance is increased, what will happen to the current? The current drawn by your instrument decreases. When the current decreases, automatically theta will decrease. So because we have seen here that the theta is proportional to the voltage square, or theta is actually proportional to the current that is passing through it, right? So current square. So to avoid this problem, so we want that my resistance should be far high when compared to the inductance of the coil. So in that case, even though this omega L is increased with the change in the frequency or decreased with change in the frequency, it is not going to have the overall effect on the impedance. So this is the first one. And practically, generally for if you are using for a voltmeter, this instrument is used only up to 125 Hz, so that the error introduced will be minimum. And there is a limitation of these instruments. So generalized for the case of ammeters, for the case of power, measurement of the power or the current also, or as well as voltage. So for very low frequencies, if you are going for less than 15 Hz, the pointer oscillates at 2 times the frequency around its final position. Final position means it is actually measuring the RMS value of the voltage, right? So as it is oscillating around the final position, we cannot measure the accurate value. So that is a disadvantage. So that's why this is used only for frequencies greater than 15 Hz. Either you use for DC or only for frequencies above 15 Hz and less than 125 Hz. This is used as an voltmeter in practice. So now coming to the ammeter, this limitation is not there for the remaining. I am only discussing about the voltmeter. So then going to the ammeter, in the case of ammeter, what will be there? The fixed coil is in the outer side. We can make either thick conductor or any conductor, there is no issue, so there is no problem. But coming to the moving coil, because moving coil is placed on a moving system, which is kept on a spindle, the weight of the moving coil should be as minimum as possible, so that frictional loss will be minimum. As the weight is less, so frictional loss will be less. If you are keeping directly carrying the entire current, to carry the entire current, the thickness of conductor required increases, weight increases, and the frictional loss increases. So in order to avoid the problem of the frictional loss, what we will do, we will connect one shunt resistance across this moving coil. So majority of the current will be bypassed through the shunt resistor. Only small fraction of the current will pass through the moving coil. So that is the purpose of RSH. I am repeating again, RSH is used to limit the current through the moving coil, since the weight of the moving part should be as less as possible to decrease the friction loss. So the current passing through the moving coil should be as minimum. I am representing by IM, should be as minimum as possible. So that means the value of ISH will be far greater than IM. So we know the current passing through the instrument because in parallel circuit, current into other impedance by total impedance. Other impedance is impedance of your shunt resistance, because every resistance will have the inductance and capacitance inbuilt. Some part will always be there. So that's why I am representing by ZSH for the case of AC divided by total impedance, where total impedance is the parallel combination of ZSH and Zm. Similarly, I can calculate ISH is equal to I into Zm divided by Z. So this I can write as Im by ISH will be nothing but ZSH by Zm. When you are substituting the value, ZSH is nothing but square root of RSH square plus omega LSH square. L is the inductance of this shunt. So let us assume inductance of the shunt is given by LSH. Similarly, for this moving coil, I am representing by Rm is the resistance of the moving coil and Lm is the self-inductance of the moving coil, omega Lm square. So I am just taking RSH outside, Rm outside. When you take it, this will become omega LSH by RSH. This will be omega Lm by Rm whole square. So if this L by R ratio, that means LSH by RSH is same as Lm by Rm, then you can see both these things will cancel out. So we will get the Im divided by ISH is nothing but equal to RSH by Rm. That means this will become independent of the frequency. It is not depending on the frequency. Or we can tell that the time constant of the shunt, because time constant is nothing but L by R, time constant of the shunt should be equal to time constant of the moving coil, so that it will be independent of the frequency. It can be used up to the radio frequencies without any problem. So now let us see the advantages of dynamometer type instruments. So advantages is they can be used for both DC as well as AC. So because they are the transfer instruments, the accuracy is very high, so they can be used for calibration of other instruments, and they are free from hysteresis and eddy current loss because the coils are air cooled. Coming to the disadvantage, so low torque to weight ratio, because the flux operating field is very less, so automatically torque is less in this case. So the low torque to weight ratio and hence have low sensitivity. It is having a sensitivity of between 10 to 30 ohms per volt and highly expensive compared to other instruments for voltmeter and ammeter, therefore used only for precision measurements. If you want to use this for voltmeter or ammeter, better go for either PMMC instruments for DC measurement. For AC measurement, go for the moving iron instruments because they are cheaper. But the disadvantage is they are not so much accurate. If you want more accuracy, so in that case only we go for these instruments. So that's why it is used. For measurement of power, anyway you can go for this instrument. So the scale is non-uniform. That is a disadvantage we have seen, particularly for the case of voltage and current. For power it is uniform. For measurement of voltage and current it is non-uniform. Then the frictional losses are high in this case. And next one is higher power consumption compared to PMMC instrument. In the case of permanent magnet moving coil instrument, the permanent magnet is providing the required operating field, but in this case that field also is produced by the current only, so that power is taken from your supply. So that is the reason it consumes more power when compared to PMMC type of instruments. I hope the advantage, disadvantage and applications of dynamometer type instruments are clear to you. If you still have any queries, you can leave your comments in the comment section below. I will answer to your queries from there. Thank you very much.